Hello everyone, my name is Brian, but you can call me the Bugler, and today we're going to be breaking down and analyzing the exotic rocket launcher, the Wardcliff Coil. So let's get started. The exotic perk is called Mad Scientist. This weapon fires a volley of rockets. We'll also be talking about a second perk called Mechanized Autoloader. Picking up ammo for this weapon will automatically reload it. Let's take a look at the rockets first. When you fire this weapon, you launch a volley of exactly 8 rockets. Each rocket behaves independently of one another, but there are some important things to know. Every rocket deals the exact same amount of damage, both impact and explosive damage, which you can see here. There's also another thing that you should know. The rockets do not suffer any fall-off damage, being that they are rockets. So no matter how far away you are from an enemy, as long as you hit them with a direct strike from one of these rockets, it will deal the same amount of damage as if you were right in the enemy's face. In addition to this, rockets fired from the Wardcliff Coil have an innate tracking ability, and since they behave independently of one another, we can have situations where only parts of the volley actually lock onto enemies. It seems like the range is somewhere between 5 and 10 meters for a rocket to actually lock on. So depending on the spread of the volley, you might not have every single rocket track an enemy. And here's where things get interesting. Because the tracking is tied to the rocket itself and not the player character or a lock-on, there is no range in which the tracking will not be effective. As long as you're lucky enough for the rocket to fly within its tracking radius, it will track the enemy and try to attack them, making this a dubious volley indeed. Let's move on to Mechanized Autoloader next. This perk will automatically reload our weapon when we pick up ammo for it, but there are some caveats. The first of which is that the weapon needs to be out in order for this reload to take place. If the weapon is stowed, you will not see a reload, so keep that in mind. Other than that, all we need is no ammo in the chamber. And because of how this weapon actually functions, in that it fires volleys of rockets, we can do something interesting with our automatic reload. As long as you fire at least half of the rockets in the volley, you can reload the weapon mid-volley, thereby maximizing our firing rate. If you do not fire at least half the rockets in the volley, you'll instead be stuck reloading manually because the ammo will be added to your reserves. Before we move on, I want to talk about how useful I think Mechanized Autoloader is. When I first started using this weapon, I thought of Mechanized Autoloader as a passive bonus, something that you would only see sometimes. However, when I got more practice with it, I began to use it actively. Instead of picking up ammo as soon as it dropped, I would instead leave it there, choosing to use that ammo as a free reload basically, and thereby maximize my firing rate and DPS whenever I needed it. This is just something I wanted to point out before we moved on, because I thought it was very interesting, and a little bit unexpected. Let's move on to something that the community refers to as the Coil Glitch. As long as you have one volley for the coil, you can switch power weapons and you'll receive a lot of ammo for it. That's because the game registers a volley of the Wardcliff Coil to be each individual rocket. So, the game's code thinks we have much more ammo than we actually do. After patch 1.1.0, we are now unable to do the glitch with the Titan Barricade, and that's because there's been a change to how the game registers partial clips of the Wardcliff Coil. As soon as we fire one rocket from the coil, it now considers every single rocket to be out of the magazine, as far as ammo goes. What this means is that the other glitch regarding the Titan Barricade will now no longer work, because as soon as one rocket is fired, we lose that bullet. Now, since we're talking about an exotic rocket launcher, I'd be remiss if I didn't compare it to other popular weapons in the same category. Against the Modular Mind, the coil deals 2,936 damage per volley, if we hit him with every single rocket. I compared this to the Curtain Call, a popular cluster bomb rocket launcher, because I don't have sins of the past. Against the Modular Mind, we have the potential to deal more damage than the coil, in this clip dealing about 3,045 damage, but this depends on the spread of our cluster bombs, meaning that our potential damage is higher, but our minimum damage is lower. Where the curtain call beats out the coil is in its range. We can shoot this rocket launcher from any distance and still deal quite a bit of damage, whereas the Wardcliff coil, we need to be much closer in order for every single rocket to take tracking. This is a big downfall for the coil, so I wouldn't recommend it in a lot of situations where you don't want to be right up in your enemy's face. Alright, now that you know how the weapon works and its damage potential in comparison to another weapon in its class, I'm going to give you my opinion on the Wardcliff coil, and I think it's actually pretty good depending on what activities you're playing. Against single targets and even small groups of enemies, it can be extremely effective, and in public events, I find this weapon to be excellent. You can destroy things that need to be destroyed in order to trigger heroic public events all by yourself, and you can deal quite a bit of damage to those boss enemies while keeping them stun locked for your teammates to deal extra damage as well. Where the weapon falls off is at close range and far range. At close range, this weapon is going to get you killed. A lot. It's gotten me killed quite a few times, and when your teammates are running around near you when you're using it, it can become a hazard to yourself, more so than the enemies that are shooting at you, because the rockets will explode when you hit your teammate in the back. So 8 rockets flying in a random direction in front of you while someone strafes in those rockets will lead to you being killed. This is especially true against Vex Minotaurs, who like to get right up in your face without warning. If you try to shoot at one and they teleport into your face, naturally the results will be less than ideal. We experience other problems at far range, being that the weapon becomes pretty much ineffective at far ranges. If the pattern in which the rockets are flying is not kind to you, you won't hit any of them against those enemies. So even though we don't suffer damage fall off and our tracking isn't necessarily being punished, if you don't hit every single rocket, there's no reason for you to use that exotic slot. That's really what we have to value it against. You're taking up an exotic slot, and right now there are plenty of exotic weapons in the game that you could use to deal more damage than the Wardcliff coil against certain enemies. Where the value really lies is getting in that sweet spot range and hitting every single rocket. Now, does that mean that the weapon is not fun? I think this weapon is a damn blast. I love the Wardcliff coil. It's a fun exotic, and that is exactly the point. It doesn't need to be the best in every single situation. It's exactly the reason why I liked the Fighting Lion pre-patch, even when most players considered it to be fairly poor. It doesn't need to be good to be fun, and fun is the name of the game. That's why we play video games. I remember when video games used to be fun, and this weapon brings it back to me. And that's the end of this breakdown. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions about how I conducted the tests, or why I might not have included other footage, please let me know in the comments so I could answer them for you. For my next video, I'll finally be doing my Warlock Best in Show video. I've been putting it off for a little while in order to cover these patch changes, but I'm finally going to buckle down and put that video out sometime this week. I won't be going live on Twitch today because I finally have time to sit down and play the Sea of Thieves Alpha, which is under NDA, so I cannot stream it. If you'd like to follow my Twitch channel so you can watch me when I do go live, you can find the link to that in this video's description, as well as the link to our Discord server, clan page, and Patreon. So once again, thanks for watching, I hope I see you next time, and good luck getting through the exclusion zone.